Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about a fantasy drama film called The Vampire Next Door from 2024. Enjoy your viewing. One morning, Cameron is lying next to Diane in bed, and they confess their love for each other. Suddenly, the guy wakes up and realizes that the romantic moment with his beloved was just a dream. Later, Cameron's parents, Hunter and Carol, argue about their son's future. Hunter believes that it is time for Cameron to decide on his future plans, and Carol asks him not to put so much pressure on him. At the ice cream parlor where Cameron works, assistant manager Lenny reprimands him for being late and orders him to close the parlor tonight. Cameron tries to explain that he has a date with Diane tonight, but Lenny doesn't believe that a guy can date someone so beautiful. Meanwhile, a mysterious woman appears at the neighbor's house. The same day, Cameron's co-worker, Liz, is angry that she has to close the cafe in the evening, and she doesn't believe in his date with Diane either. Cameron explains that he and Diane have been friends for years, and he was the first person she wrote to when she returned to the city from college. After work, Cameron comes to Diane's house, where he sees her sunbathing in a bikini. Suddenly, the bullies, Chad and Jason, appear, accusing the boy of spying on Diane and secretly taking pictures of her. They throw Cameron's phone on the road. Diane comes out to hear the noise, and Cameron assures her that he wasn't spying on her, trying to prove it, but his phone is run over by a car. Diane believes him and orders the bullies to leave, and then Cameron leaves too. In the evening, Cameron accidentally sees his neighbor Victoria undressing through the window, but she immediately notices the boy, forcing him to hide. During dinner, Hunter says that he won't buy his son a new phone because he had to fight back against the bullies. Suddenly, the doorbell rings, and Cameron is horrified to see his neighbor Victoria, but when he shyly opens the door, only Diane stands on the threshold. They go to a pizzeria for a bite to eat, where Diane apologizes for leaving Cameron without a phone. When Cameron sees his friend Martin, he calls him over, although Diane asks him not to. Martin, seeing Diane, is embarrassed for some reason and walks away. On the way home, Diane finally reveals the reason. It turns out that Martin broke up with her right at the prom for an unknown reason. Cameron is very surprised and says that he would never leave such a beautiful woman. Then Diane recalls the night Cameron came to her house, and they drank her father's alcohol together. She says that she wanted to tell him something that night that she had never told anyone, but he fell asleep. Suddenly, Cameron sees Victoria again, and because of this, he quickly returns home. When he runs into his room, Victoria mysteriously appears right behind him. Cameron immediately begins to make excuses for peeping, as he usually sees an elderly woman in the next window. Victoria says that she will be living in the woman's house for a while, and demands that Cameron drive her around town in his car for a few days, as punishment for peeping. The guy replies that he hasn't paid the car insurance, but Victoria categorically says that this is his problem. Later, Cameron drives Victoria to an office building, where she takes the keys to his car, so that he won't leave without her. The security guard lets Victoria in, and Cameron goes to the building half an hour later, tired of waiting for her in the car. Suddenly, a bloody guard runs out of the door and begs for help. Cameron rushes back to the car in a panic and is horrified to see Victoria pounce on the guard and kill him in cold blood. He realizes that Victoria is a vampire. She tells him that he will have to drive her around if he wants to survive, and she kisses him goodbye. The next day, Hunter notices blood on the car, and Victoria, who shows up on time, explains that it is the blood of a deer that suddenly ran out onto the road. Victoria also adds that she will pay for Cameron's insurance if he drives her around. Hunter sees nothing wrong with that, which disappoints his son. Later, Martin admits that he dumped Diane at the prom because he didn't know how to treat a beautiful girl. He even asks Cameron to convince her to give him another chance. That night, Cameron is waiting in the car when Victoria enters the building. A few minutes later, a lifeless man's body falls right onto the car. Victoria soon returns, greedily licking the blood, and Cameron washes the blood off the car on the way home. A few hours later, the vampire suddenly appears in bed next to Cameron, deciding to tell him the reason for her appearance in the city. It turns out that the woman is already 247 years old, and in 1890, a hostile vampire clan killed her lover because he refused to join them. Over the past 100 years, most of the enemy vampires have moved to America, and now Victoria is tracking them down to take revenge and kill every last one of them. Cameron breathes a sigh of relief when he learns that his neighbor has been killing vampires, not humans. The next day, Martin asks Cameron to go on a date with Diane because he is very nervous. A little later, Lenny is surprised to see Cameron and Diane having a nice conversation. In the evening, Victoria says that today she will destroy one of the last enemies, after which she will have to find their evil leader, who killed her beloved. Despite Victoria's order to stay in the car, Cameron accompanies her to the building. There they find an enemy who fires a gun several times, and Cameron falls to the floor. Victoria rushes at the enemy and eliminates him by biting him hard on the neck. After that, Cameron gets up and confesses to his companion that he is not wounded and fell to the floor only to distract the enemy. Before saying goodbye, Cameron asks Victoria to show up at Martin and Diane's date so that he has an excuse to go with them. The next day, Liz invites Cameron to watch her friend's band perform in the evening, but he politely declines. On their date, Cameron breaks the awkward silence by telling them that Martin really wants to play baseball professionally. As soon as Diane goes to the restroom, Victoria appears and calls Cameron to go outside with her. Cameron confesses to Victoria that he has been in love with Diane for several years, just like Martin. Cameron explains that he specifically wants Diane to spend some time with Martin so that she can finally realize how boring he is. In the evening, Cameron shows Victoria the bullies who are constantly picking on him. The girl deliberately provokes Chad to hit Cameron, and then teaches him several strong punches so that he can finally stand up for himself. Cameron boldly approaches Chad and punches him hard in the ribs, making him writhe in pain. After that, the bullies finally agree to leave the boy alone. In the car, Cameron complains of severe pain in his wrist after the blow. Then Victoria gives him a liquid to drink from a small bottle. The vampire confesses that it is her blood, which will quickly heal all human wounds, but will not turn him into a vampire. At night, when Cameron dreams of Diane, Victoria appears in his bed and begins to kiss him passionately to make Diane jealous. Hunter unexpectedly enters the room, but immediately leaves when he sees what is happening on the bed. However, Cameron still stops the vampire, not wanting to cheat on Diane, hoping to get reciprocity from her. In the morning, Hunter winks at his son with understanding at the table. Later, Martin confesses to his friend that yesterday's date after he left was just awful, and Cameron replies that he probably won't succeed with Diane. Meanwhile, Victoria enters the clothing store where Diane works. Cameron tells Liz about his complicated relationship with girls, and finally agrees to watch her friend's band perform that night. In the evening, Hunter gives his son a pack of gum. On his way to the performance, the boy suddenly notices Diane entering his neighbor's house. He immediately changes his mind about going and hurries home. Meanwhile, Liz can't wait for him at the concert venue. Cameron is very jealous when he sees Diane and Victoria kissing from the window of his house, and then they turn off the light and go to bed together. In the morning, Cameron sees Diane leave her neighbor's house, and Victoria comes out after her and asks him with a smile if he liked the show. Cameron gets very angry and says that he refuses to work for her. But the vampire abruptly grabs him by the collar and declares that they will definitely finish the job together. Later, Cameron invites Martin to go on another date with Diane, promising to help his friend. He then goes to a cafe where Liz slaps him for not showing up to the concert last night. Cameron goes to a clothing store where Diane tells him that Martin has asked her out again the same day. Carol gives her son a new phone, but asks him not to tell his father about it yet. Later, Cameron orders Martin to wear an earpiece with a microphone on the date, so that he can give his friend advice if necessary. On the date, Cameron hears the entire conversation between the couple, after which a satisfied Diane gives Martin the car keys to take her wherever he wants. Cameron tells his friend to take the beauty home, but he refuses and takes her to a secluded place. Annoyed, Cameron hurries after the couple and sees Diane whispering something into an earpiece from behind a tree and then throwing it out the window. This means that the girl has known about the earpiece all along. Suddenly, Diane bites Martin's neck, revealing that she is also a vampire. Upset, Cameron goes to Liz's cafe, but she is not there. Soon Diane shows up, and Cameron is afraid of her because he thinks she eliminated his friend. The girl shows Martin alive in the trunk of the car, and explains that she just made him stronger so that he could play baseball professionally. She confesses that she loves Cameron, and was afraid she would lose him if he found out the truth. Diane says with regret that she has been alive for several centuries, and everyone she has ever loved has died of old age. She doesn't want the same thing to happen to Cameron. Cameron forgives the girl, and they kiss, while Lenny secretly watches them from around the corner. In the evening, Victoria tells Cameron that she didn't know Diane was a vampire until she took a closer look at her. It turns out that Diane is a member of a hostile vampire clan that Victoria is hunting, and now the boy will be bait for her. Feeling that Cameron is in danger, Diane comes to his house. Suddenly, Lenny jumps out from behind a tree and says he knows who she is. He threatens to tell everyone the truth. Diane throws him to the ground and drinks his blood. A few minutes later, Diane and Martin break into the house, where they see Victoria taking Cameron hostage. The two vampires get into a fierce fight. Victoria rushes at Diane with a blade, but she fights back and seizes the initiative in the fight, pinning her opponent to the floor. Diane explains that 100 years ago, their leader became incredibly cruel, and she wanted to escape from him. Then she met Victoria's lover, who told her that she would be safe in their clan and even gave her his blood. However, her heartless leader found out about it and killed Victoria's lover. After learning the truth, Victoria apologizes and forgives Diane. The two vampires decide to create their own new clan and move on with their lives. Diane kisses Cameron goodbye, and Lenny, who has become a vampire, appoints Liz as the new assistant manager of the cafe and leaves with the vampires. The next day, Cameron tells his parents that he wants to write a book about vampires. Back at the cafe, Cameron tells Liz his incredible story. The girl does not believe her colleague, but still lets him into the cafe.
If you have watched the video so far, you should know that I am happy to have viewers like you. Thank you for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel and follow the news. Klonsak Recapped was with you. See you soon.